Everyone, welcome back to Sgcarmart and another episode of Backseat Driver. So today we have Preston, Vice President, Toyota Motor Asia, as well as Charmain, Executive Director at Eurokars Group. We're going to talk about, I think, quite an interesting topic for a lot of Singapore car buyers, right? So I think the framing device is the notion of cars being sold by ADs versus PIs in some ways. And I guess we want to maybe answer this question that some people may have. So I think the question that some of you may have is that, why is it that the car you want is not being officially sold in Singapore? Right, so just to give some context, I think there are probably two instances of this sort of AD versus PI divide that we see. So I think the first is perhaps people are shopping a particular model and then they go onto the internet because we have the internet, and then they see, this other country got this particular specification and variant that we're not getting. And then they wonder, how come we're not getting that? Alternatively, I think the other question some people may have is that they see this particular model being launched in Japan, in Europe, and say, why are we not getting it in Singapore? Obviously, Preston, you come from the principal brand perspective, and Charmain, you obviously run a multi-franchise business, and that's the distributor side. So just want to get your opening thoughts on this grey market and what you all generally make of it. Preston?
To develop a car, actually we took around 3 years. So we need to understand the customer, the preference, the regulation. It's not that we don't want to launch the car in every market. However, the effort to develop the specification towards the homologation kind of a process for each country actually is a very tedious process. We need to build a prototype towards the country, the wire harness, safety aspect, and so on and so forth. For us to introduce a car to the market, it takes around 2 to 3 years to conceive the idea and then launch the car. So it's not that we don't want to. Having said that, in Singapore, Toyota have actually around 17 models. So basically, it's quite a wide range for the consumer to choose from. Hopefully, this can answer the consumer why it takes some time to launch, or some car is not launched in Singapore.
And Charmain, from a distributor's perspective, what do you make of the grey market?
I think, for distributor's point of view, I think it's very simple. The answer purely is just taxes. Definitely Preston is right in saying that it takes a long time to basically build the car specific to the market's demands as well as the market's requirements. But at the same time in Singapore, as we all know, purchasing a car is not as simple as just purchasing a car. There's so many taxes put on it, even right before the car is even put into the showroom. Right before you even drive the car out, you have your ARF, you have your levies and everything else as well. So with all these excise duty taxes and everything, it's all affected by the OMV of the car itself. So as you know that if you get a more higher spec car when you bring it in, naturally the taxes, the percentage put on the car itself would also be higher. So with that in mind, also bearing in mind to keep the price more reasonable for the market itself, in that sense, certain car makers have decided to go for a lower spec or a more safer option with regards to selling the car in the market. Otherwise, the car won't move at all. So I guess from a dealer's perspective, purely really is just taxes.
And perhaps, Preston, I want to ask you, because you have that regional experience. I think you've overseen many markets, right? So from a principles of product strategy perspective, how do you decide sort of which markets get which models and what specifications?
We do some survey. We call it Sgcarmart. We understand the future market forecasting. We work with the distributor, understand the trend from the mother company, Toyota. We also derive from the global what kind of structure we would like to introduce in terms of the frame. And from there, each market will put out their hand. I need this, I need that. However, looking at the volume and the so-called regulation from each market, then we decide. And the total spectrum of what model to introduce, we need to cover the whole A segment to basically D segment, we call the luxury segment. One by one, we will choose the right car for the right market.
And something that you brought up, which I think perfectly brings Charmain to the picture, right? This question of what does the distributor want? So, I don't know, but in your personal experiences, how much of it is what the brand and principal essentially wants for that market, and how much is what the distributor wants? Perhaps your individual experiences.
I think generally most principals, they want numbers, right? Who doesn't want that? So that's a priority for most principals. But when it comes to what distributors or dealers really want, it's really also, while getting numbers at the same time, being able to bring in a car that really fits the market's demands in terms of not just the product usability, in terms of the aesthetics of the product, but also the cost of the product. Again, price is a very big concern in Singapore.
Yeah.
Especially with cars being easily more than 100 plus K, 200 plus K, with the COE being sky high as well. So with that in mind, I think one example that we could give is, for example, the MG4. So when the MG4 was first brought in, it was a Cat B. So with that in mind, I think Cat B prices were an all-time high. So with that also, we were like, okay, this is a really great car, really great aesthetics as well, but because of the pricing, because of the COE factored in, with that, it's just making the car a little less demanded for in the market. So with that, we did do our feedback to our principals, and with that, they came in with the MG4 Cat A. So it's all kind of like these kind of things that changed up a little bit so as to meet the market demands a lot better.
I guess the other sort of obvious question to ask is this whole notion of why can't we just get what another market has? And obviously, I think the obvious question with a brand like Toyota is like, we have models in Thailand, we have models in Malaysia, so on and so forth. So why can we not just, I guess, like supplant, like say, oh, okay, we just want that one, and then let's just get that one. Which, I mean, in some ways is then what the parallel importers are doing. Yeah.
So if you look at it closely, parallel importer don't really import from various markets around Asia. They most likely go for Japan, which is quite closely to Singapore regulation, which is Singapore government open up. LTA actually open up with this kind of regulation, and some from basically Europe, I'm not so sure. Why we can't get from other countries around Asia, basically we are Euro 6, they are now looking at Euro 5, the emission situation, and also Singapore have the strictest regulation that command and request from the LTA. So having this in mind, as an AD, authorized dealer, and also a principal, we will always consider the safety aspect for the customer. Just for example, if you want to change the audio, the amount of work that we need to consider is how to rewire the whole car in order to be safe to drive.
And then you have to re-homologate it again in Singapore.
Yes. So that's why if we continue to or we always introduce model, you will add in the cost to the AD because they need to homologate. And if the volume is so small, it's not worth for the consumer itself.
I think that's a very fair thing to also maybe point out to people, right? Because I think it's very easy to just go on the internet and say, oh, this model, then you can see, oh, this country got this country, but then you don't realize that, different countries work at different regulations, have different requirements, and at the end of the day, these cars have to all pass these regulations, right? So then I want to ask about the question of maybe some Singaporeans will feel, hey, why do we not get these models, or why do we get it so late, or why does it take so long when we see the car in Japan like a year ago? And then I think there's obviously going to be a group of people with perhaps more disposable income like, oh, I'm just going to find someone to import it for me.
So I think the most vivid example I could remember in my experience of being in the car trade for the past 2 years was, if you guys remember, a long time ago, the Taycan was a bit out of stock for a while, right? So it took a very long time for it to come. The waiting list was crazy long. So with that, I think we saw a lot of cases whereby people decided to import their own Taycans in, go to PI distributors to get the Taycans in instead. I won't say it's the majority of it, but most of the cases that came back to us. So as you know that if you buy a parallel importer car, you cannot really bring it back to a dealer to service the car, authorized dealers, unless you pay an adoption fee. So even with regards to the adoption fee, there's also a case-by-case discretionary basis, because you also got to see whether the car is able to... Okay, basically, I don't know the mechanics. I think you could talk about it more, but more of the...
I try.
Yeah. The system of the car, basically, when it's made for a certain region or a certain country, it's slated for the country itself. I think a few Taycans, when the PI Taycans, when they did come in, there's a few problems that we couldn't resolve from our end as well, because it was slated for, I think, the UK market or some other Europe market at that point in time. So with that in mind also, it was very hard for us to even fix the customer's problem, and the customer couldn't do anything as well, because when the customer did buy the car from a parallel importer, he did agree to all of the potential risks that was open to it as well. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges that we saw in terms of people wanting to get the product ahead of time. I think another reason why you were saying that why it takes so long for the car to be slated for the Singapore market, for it to come in when all the other markets could have it, I think homologation really is the bigger part of it. I think homologation, while it's a very tedious process, we all complain about it. But ultimately, it serves to really make sure that the car is fit for the market in terms of its practicality, in terms of its usage, in terms of, let's say it's an EV car. It fits all the chargers around here, the electricity port is enough, or okay, then again, I don't know technicalities too well, but basically it's just made for the Singapore market. Yeah. I
mean, there's a question, right? How much of it is volume? Because, Singapore is a small market, all things considered.
We do consider a special case for some certain market like Bhutan, Nepal, even Cambodia. It's a small volume market. Singapore compared to them, is quite a big volume market. So in terms of volume, 200, 300 vehicles per year and so on and so forth, we can consider that as a part of the accepted level of introduction. And one point that Charmain has brought out is very clear that when we import through parallel importer, the warranty is not given by the authorized dealership. As well, when you go for services, AD and also we as a principal, we train the AD technician to take care of the car and understand the car, so that the servicing that you get from the AD is totally different from what you get from outside under the warranty. So they know the particular car, how it was to be serviced, where is the problem. But if you want to get the car earlier, what we did before with BMS and Bonnet Motor is, as you remember, there's Harrier issue. Harrier parallel importer are brought in earlier compared to BMS. Immediately we told Japan side that we need it, and within 3 months we get it. So all the planning is necessary, all the forecasting is necessary, and all the understanding of the market is necessary for us to react, to sort of proactively introduce whatever model that is suitable for the market itself.
And I'm curious from a principal or brand's perspective, and pardon me if I'm a little bit ignorant on this, but like, how much do you care about who is selling the car, or how much vested interest do you have in sort of supporting your ADs and trying to sort of cut out the PIs, or market is market, right? I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
It's not easy to set up an authorized dealership for the company. Yeah. We need to be responsible from a principal perspective to the authorized dealership as a wholesaler for them. So we always consider customer first, dealer second, manufacturing third, from a Toyota perspective. So we will not like to encourage in terms of apparel importer. And in the other way we look at it, also the branding itself. We cannot, as a principal, guarantee they provide the best so-called customer service, best sales operation, and best customer experience to the customer compared to the ADs. This is how the principal is looking at this.
And I think that's fair. I think that's always the, trade-off when you consider between like AD and PI, because I think typically, maybe with PI model, you can get it a little bit quicker, maybe a little bit cheaper, but then you are sort of accepting those compromises as well. So from a distributor's perspective, like how do you tackle sort of your customers sort of maybe potentially shopping between ADs and PIs?
The most prominent thing that I could relate to again was one of our experiences at Porsche. So there was one point in time, I think a few years back, before there's a 5-year warranty that was introduced for Porsche, the PI numbers were crazy as well. So with that, once we introduced the 5-year servicing warranty package, I think a lot of that comes with the car when you buy it. A lot of customers did come back to us in the end, and they found it more worth it to purchase a new car as well. And I think, thank you again for recognizing that it's not easy to be an authorized dealer. We did go through a lot of rigorous training in terms of quality control on how we sell our products, in terms of how we service the products as well. So with that in mind, it gives customers the assurance that the car that they really get from the showroom is a real car. It has not been tampered with. It's completely new. And at the same time, when they're servicing it, they know that they can get the top-notch service that the technicians were trained to do based from the principal's brands and everything. So that's definitely one of the biggest factors to really bring customers in. So actually, if you see in the market, most of the cars now, they do come with at least minimum 3 years of warranty or servicing as well, to really give that customers that peace of mind that after you buy the car, that's not the end of the transaction. There's more to it. If there's any issues, you can always bring the car back to authorized dealer, and that's the benefit that you really get of really purchasing from an authorized dealer as opposed to an aftermarket apparel importer. Yeah.
I also want to ask, maybe just to be a little bit more niche and sort of pedantic, but maybe this question of why can't I get that particular model? So I think perhaps maybe you want to drill down on some of these more limited volume models, or more special models. So with, like, for example, with Toyota, I can think of maybe potentially like the GL Corolla, for example, one of the newer models, right? Or with like your special edition Porsches or special edition M cars, right? So what do you say to these customers who say, hey, I want that car, but you are perhaps going to sell 4 of them in Singapore. So they perhaps then will inevitably turn to a parallel importer to say, oh, just get me one example of it. So from a principal or an authorized distributor's perspective, how do you deal with these customers and their particular and specific demands? Okay,
I think from a dealer point of view, whatever the customers want, we will try our best and endeavour to get it as much as we can for them. But at the same time, as I was mentioning earlier, with special model cars, on its own, before it's even brought into Singapore, it's already expensive. When it comes into Singapore and taxes are put on it, it's going to be astronomically expensive. So with that in mind, as long as the customer is really willing to put down money where his mouth is, basically in that sense, we're more than happy to bring it in for him. And also at the same time, it's also the relationship with the principals and how I'm not sure exactly what goes on at the principal side per se, but I think also in terms of distribution for special models, they also want to make more allocation for bigger markets. So in that sense, I think it's also how convincing we are, how we convince the principals, hey, this customer is a legit one, he really will pay, you just give the car here and then we'll definitely get you a sale. And also at the same time, I think it helps that we're in Singapore, because Singapore is a country in which also that while it's small, there are eyes looking at it as well. I won't say it's a country that nobody really cares about. So at the same time, that also does help our convincing of the principals. But then again, I think ultimately the issue here really is cost, because if you get it in Japan, it's going to be a lot cheaper than it is in Singapore.
And from a principal's perspective?
You talk about GR Corolla, yeah, that's the only model that we don't have. Actually, we have GR Yaris, GR Supra, and total we have 4 models. GR Corolla, we didn't get it. The planning, I have to say that there's some planning matters. However, we are trying to catch it up for the next line-off. And additionally, if you talk about this special bespoke kind of models, in actual fact, we can see that the trend is there. They are getting more popular. I want to be my own unique vehicles. Maybe soon you will see more from our brand. Yeah,
interesting.
Brand. But of course I have to say that, as what Charmain had mentioned, it's not going to be cheap. And the duration will not be going to be, you can get it tomorrow or the next month. It's going to be custom made, bespoke, whatever line, so-called stitches you want to have and color and whatever. So it takes almost 9 months to a year if you want to have that kind of special models.
And I guess I also want to ask about product strategy from both an AD side as well as a principal side, right? How much of it is customer driven and how much of it is sort of what is deemed fit for the market? And I think I also want to caveat that with the fact that the Singapore market is very unique and very specific. I mean, obviously we have a COE system, right? So, how much of it is just deciding I need to, I guess, create a Cat A model perhaps just to fit under these particular regulations? And how much of it is just like, okay, we really know this is the customer demand for this particular variant, this is the customer demand for a particular variant?
Our job as dealers is really to be on the floor and to really understand what the market demands. Of course, regulations from the government, that's one thing, which I'm pretty sure that the principals are also very cognizant of. It's not just us. So I think that's kind of like set in stone already. But with regards to really what the market is looking for in terms of COE pricing, so let's say if the Cat A prices are down, Cat B is up, naturally we want more Cat A cars, right? Like the COE is quite balanced in that sense. Of course, we welcome Cat B cars as well, because generally there's more room to play with Cat B cars. Most of it, I would say at least 80% really depends on market demands too. For example, if now the market, for example, the Singapore vision is kind of going towards EV, right? Naturally, we'll demand for more EV makes, EV options, or plug-in hybrid options, all these kind of different options for the car. So with that, we do feedback to our principals, maybe you want to consider this type of car instead for this market. Or our job is basically just to give them what they need to know from the floor. And basically their eyes on the floor as well.
The other unique or quirky thing about the Singapore market is the fact that it's a fixed market, right? It's a zero-sum game. If one side is selling more cars, the other side is not. So given that fixed size, what do each of you respectively see the future of car sales in terms of perhaps the split between ADs and PIs? Do you see it changing? Do you see it sort of holding fairly consistent?
Ideally, in a perfect world, of course, we want 100% of the pie to be authorised dealers. I think that's not just from our perspective as dealers, but it's also from a consumer perspective as well, right? If I want to purchase the car, I want to know that this car really is where it came from, and I really want to know that this car is not going to break down on me halfway and I cannot find help when that happens. So I think with that security or that assurance in mind, that's something that I think all customers, you're paying so much for your car, that's something that you deserve. Even if, let's say, you're purchasing from prior importer, yes, the cost might be a bit lower than authorised dealer, but at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen to the car after that. And you might actually end up spending a lot more money to fix the car than if you were just to send it back to the authorised service provider. So in that sense, I think in the ideal world, it would be great if 100% of the pie would be for authorised dealers.
But in the not ideal world, in the sort of looking just forward in
the
time,
future, right?
in the future.
So based on, again, what I've seen so far, generally, as long as the stock comes on time, but then again, this is also shipping issues, logistics and all that kind of stuff. But again, in the ideal world, if the stock comes on time, it will also greatly reduce the demands for PI per se, because I think a period of time also there was Alphats.
Yeah.
Alphats are not in stock for a while, yeah. So with that, I think PI numbers also increased. From our side also, there was a period of time, I think Rolls-Royce as well, the numbers, I think because of COVID or post-COVID, during that period itself, we were out of stock for a fair bit. And I
It's
think
only like 2 years that it was out of stock or something
yeah,
like that.
it was a rather long time. So that really has to do with, I think, the general logistical problem across the world as well. That was also when we saw PI numbers going up. Again, to bring up the example of the Tekan, PI numbers did go up for the Tekan because the Tekan was having a very long waiting list in Singapore as well. So I think generally, in the ideal situation of where stock comes just in time, not oversupply, not over demand, that's when the PI rates will start to decrease. Because I think most Singaporeans rather are also aware of the fact that they're actually okay to buy from authorized dealers in terms of the price and everything, because they're also aware that it comes with the security and the assurance of mind that once you purchase the car, it's good, like you're good for the next 10 years. Yeah.
Of course, from a principle, we would like the AD to have the whole pie, to be very frank. This guarantee the brand, guarantee the resale value, guarantee the customer experience. I think that is what we're looking at. However, in Singapore, I believe there's always a chance that we can't get enough allocation. That's why PI will find their own ways and means to do it. Looking forward, I believe all the principle is also concerned about such kind of trend that customers start to complain sometimes, feedback and so on. So I understand that Mercedes is trying to manage the PI, and they did quite well, if I'm not wrong. I don't know about BM. And Toyota also try our best to manage the PI from the source. We are working closely with the distributor, but we can't really eliminate PI from the Singapore context.
And I suppose maybe you could also sort of expand, and perhaps Charmain as well, because you also operate in other regional markets. Like PI is not unique to Singapore, right? I mean, it happens everywhere, right?
Everywhere. Just Singapore is a much more prominent kind of situation.
I mean, of course, when the specific item you're talking about costs so much money, everyone's going to be so much more price sensitive to everything as well.
Even the country like Cambodia, the PI is like 70% of the whole market. Bangladesh, 90%. So all this, of course, their market is very small. It's not just Singapore problem.
And Charmain, do you all see that in other markets as well?
I think we do, but then again, it's also brand specific. So I think you did ask just now, like you're not sure about BM, right? So actually, BM is one of the better examples. I think out of most makes that we know of in Singapore, BM is the most negligible PI numbers, because I think that really took a lot of work from the principals as well as the dealers, not just in Singapore, in other markets as well, to really continuously work together to say, okay, the market demands this now, can you provide this model right now? Okay, yes, we can, allocations put through. And with that, and of course, competitive pricing as well as assurance that the servicing is all packaged nicely together, everything put together, just basically, it's a nicer, more attractive package to the customer. So with that in mind, I think it also takes the dealer to work hand in hand with, as well as the principal, to really bring up the brand in terms of making sure that the PI numbers are kept low, as well as also ensuring that holistic like brand image that's only going to be sold by the authorized dealer instead. Yeah, there's a premiumness to it.
And perhaps just to quickly wrap up, right? I think we've talked a lot about from the brand perspective and from the market's perspective, and I think understandably we all work in this ecosystem, so we perhaps understand. But perhaps just to talk to that individual buyer who doesn't really care so much about this is your strategy. It's just I just want this car. I just want this particular model, this particular variant. Why can't I get it? Or when can I get it? What will you say to that buyer?
The sky's the limit, like I said, if you're willing to
So money talks.
I'm pretty sure we'll find a way to get the car in for you.
Yeah, that is from the dealers. From the principle, of course, the safety of the car, the usage of the car is very important. We will try our best. However, the cost will roll down to the AD, and AD will roll down the cost to you. However, if really we are going to introduce this car to this market, we are ensuring everything is well taken care of. So that is the assurance from the principal. For example, if there's any recall happen, we'll know what will happen for the PI. Yeah. So let's consider for your peace of mind, as what Charmain mentioned. I think from the AD will give you a really peace of mind that you can guarantee from the AD, guarantee from the principal itself.
Okay, great. I think that's very good perspective on what you can expect in the difference between ADs and PIs, right? So why is the car that you are not officially on sale in Singapore? I think obviously the answer is there's a lot of reasons why. There are a whole variety of reasons, but I think as you guys correctly point out, it's very much a question of meeting market demand, but also meeting market regulations. And ultimately, you want to put the right product in the right market at the right time and ensure that the product is ideal and safe for the market. All right, guys, so we hope you've enjoyed this conversation about the differences between shopping with an AD as well as a PI. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And of course, you can also hit the notification bell to be alerted of all our upcoming videos, and check us out on TikTok for more interesting content. So thank you, Preston. Thank you, Charmain. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.